book lovers, it is G-Swizz here, and I'm here today to talk about the 30 books I want to read before I turn 30. So this is a concept I've seen go around here on BookTube a few times, and only recently did I stumble upon Becca in the Books' recap of her 30 before 30 challenge. And while I've been intrigued by this concept for quite some time, it actually very much encouraged me to start challenging myself to pick 30 before I turn 30. And so that's what I did. Essentially right now, as I'm speaking, I am 27 years old, and I turned 30 in about 2 years and 4 months time. So my birthday is on October 29th, but it might go up sometime later because my content schedule is always kind of packed. I pre-film a lot of things. However, that all being said, I still have over 2 years to complete this TBR. And if you guys know me well, for some odd reason, I love curating TBRs. And I know some of the books that I've placed on this list today, you guys are gonna see from other TBR videos that I have done previously. And you know what? Just because I like creating TBR videos, it doesn't mean that I'm good at prioritizing things. I figured I would put these books on a TBR where the TBR takes me somewhere over 2 years to finish, because at this point I, once again, am not really good at prioritizing. However, if I can accomplish these 30 books before I turn 30, then I will forever be proud of myself. Now on this TBR, I have a good mixture of everything. I do focus a lot on romantasy, and I've got maybe like 1 or 2 contemporary novels. I have 1 or 2 classics. I have 1 or 2 translated fiction novels. Actually 3. I also have some books that I want to complete for this year's Pop Sugar Challenge, because if you guys don't know, I've actually surpassed around half of the Pop Sugar Challenges for this year, 2023, as I'm speaking right now, and I want to see if I can complete a Pop Sugar Challenge for the first time. So I guess without further ado, let's get straight into this long-term TBR and let's see where everything takes me. First book I would like to read in the lead up to my 30th birthday is Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. If you guys don't know, Gabriel Garcia Marquez is also the author of 100 Years of Solitude, which was a book I actually read around 2 to 3 years ago, and that book was very depressing, but I took a lot out of it. Funnily enough, when my mother-in-law came to visit Camilo and I here in Sydney at the beginning of this year, she brought us a bunch of gifts from my in-laws. My in-laws gave me a few bits and pieces like jewelry and snacks, and it was very nice. However, my auntie-in-law decided to get me a 2-pack of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's works. The first one being 100 Years of Solitude. So I have 2 copies of 100 Years of Solitude. I have the one that Camilo purchased for me, and I have one from my auntie-in-law, and that is just so special. But I'm also really happy that I received a second book by this author. I just want to prioritize this one, especially because it was gifted to me, because they know I love books, and that meant a lot to me. And also, this isn't too much of a commitment. I didn't want to commit to too many classics because I know that they are not as easy to prioritize. However, this classic is only 120 pages. So I reckon that this is doable within the next under 2.5 years. I reckon I can achieve this, and I really hope I get something out of this like I did with 100 Years of Solitude. And the next book slash series that I would like to read in the lead up to my 30th birthday is Hat Atelier. This was recommended to me by my husband. Essentially, he one day saw it at Kinokuniya a few years ago and admired the cover. However, Camilo was concerned that it would have been disappointing eye candy. So he decided not to purchase it, and then around 2 years later, he watches a video essay about manga paneling. And he was so captivated by the manga panels that were shown in the video essay, and so he decided that he wanted to give Hat Atelier a try. And he is so happy he did, because immediately after purchasing it, he started reading it on the train back home from Kinokuniya, and he was like, babe, I need the rest of the volumes like now. And so we placed an Amazon Prime order for the next 5 volumes, and then after that the next 4 volumes because he was absolutely obsessed. And I was just really happy to see that, because it is very rare that Camilo reads something and absolutely falls head over heels for it. And I mean, the last time I saw that happen was with the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, which I recommended to him, by the way. That is his favorite book series, and I believe his favorite manga series is is Hat Atelier. No, actually Berserk. I mean, he's caught between the two. And that's amazing because Berserk is my favorite manga series, but he is absolutely obsessed with the series. And at the moment, he keeps on going back to the store to see whether or not they have volume 11, even though, as I'm filming this right now, volume 11 has not been published in English. So pretty much Camilo is in denial. I really have to see why he loves it so much, and I've been putting it off because Camilo has been hyping this series up for me so much, to the point that I don't think that it's going to live up to the hype. I am trying to separate myself from the hype that he's already given it, but at the very same time, he pretty much talks about it almost every day. So it's really hard to escape that hype when you're living with someone who's hyping it up a lot. But I definitely want to read it sometime before I turn 30. And the next two books I would like to read before my 30th birthday happen to be from two authors who I have previously loved reading from. However, this is very interesting because I've only read Rachel Lynn Solomon's adult works, and right now I'm hesitant to read her YA works, but she's got a few of them, and apparently her young adult audience really loves them. And so I want to read her young adult works because as I'm filming this video, I'm currently out of her adult books. However, with Lynn Painter, on the other hand, I love Lynn Painter's young adult contemporary. However, I have not yet read Lynn Painter's adult contemporary novels. And so right here I have Mr. Wrong Number. This is the first one I definitely want to get to because this is the first book in a companion series that she's currently writing. And I don't know if she's gonna write outside of the companion series anytime soon, but this was essentially the first book I was interested in reading from Lynn Painter. But funnily enough, I've read Better Than the Movies and The Do-Over beforehand. And at the rate that I've been putting Mr. Wrong Number off, I think I'm gonna read Betting on You next, which is another young adult romance from Lynn Painter. So I just know that at the moment, I don't feel like prioritizing Mr. Wrong Number, but I really do want to because I love Lynn Painter. Lynn Painter can do no wrong, at least in young adult contemporary. However, I'm gonna see how I go with her adult contemporary works. Whereas with Rachel Lynn Solomon, I just absolutely adore her adult contemporary novels. And look, the only thing that scares me about young adult contemporary is that we're following younger characters who I used to relate to, but I kind of no longer relate to because, I mean, basically you guys know why based on the topic of this video. I am closer to the age of 30 than I am to my teenage years. But I really do want to read something by Rachel Lynn Solomon, and I think based on the cover, I am definitely most intrigued in We Can't Keep Meeting Like This. So I want to get to this one sometime before I turn 30. I don't usually read young adult contemporary, but if a young adult contemporary is written by an author I have previously loved, then I will consider it, especially if they are a great adult romance contemporary author. And the next book slash series I would like to read in the lead up to my 30th birthday is Dark Fever, or Fever series by Karen Marie Moaning. So I initially actually put this on my self-destructing TBR, and that is because I don't prioritize my mass market paperbacks on my shelves. I barely actually own any mass market paperbacks, but I mean, I own 5 books in the series in mass market paperbacks, so there's that. However, that is not me saying that I want to unhaul these. It's just more like I need to push myself to read these eventually. And you know what? I'm gonna push myself even further by putting this series on this TBR. I think, based on some rumors, that a book box company will be doing some special editions of the Fever series. So I am holding out to that because I don't really like these covers and I'm not motivated to pick up these mass market paperbacks. But it is a very universally loved series in the fantasy paranormal community. And I've heard good things about the series, so I don't doubt that it is going to be good. It's just I really need to push myself to read these because they very much blend in. Well, they also stand out like a sore thumb, but they blend into my shelves in a way because they are short paperbacks. And I don't like putting them on display. This video is not about aesthetics, I know. It's just a big reason why I've been putting this series off is because I just don't like making these covers visible. Therefore, I hide them away and I forget that they exist. That is a big reason why I have not read the series, but I want to change that. I want to read the series prior to turning 30. And speaking of good fantasy paranormal romance, I have Angel's Blood by Nalini Singh. I met Nalini Singh at Rare 2023, which was very exciting. She was absolutely lovely and she signed my book. I did not know this until like very recently, but I was watching one of Sash Reed's videos and they had mentioned that Sarah J Maas had taken some inspiration from Angel's Blood for her Crescent City series. And you know what? Not based on the cover, but I mean, based on the title and the synopsis, I can totally see why there was some sort of inspiration there. So I do want to read the Guild Hunter series eventually, but I especially want to obviously start the series by reading Angel's Blood. I do want to get into Nalini Singh's books. I've always kind of wanted to. I just haven't because I don't know where to start, and I think that has to do with the fact that none of her books, or at least the Australian editions of her books, have numbers on their spines. Like, I couldn't tell that this was the first book. So I'm really happy I had Sash for that. She was able to tell me that this was the first book in the series, but I really hope that I don't get lost going forward because I do want to read Nalini Singh's books. It's just I need to know where to continue from. And the next book I would like to read before my 30th birthday is A Promise of Fire by Amanda Boucher. This is the first book in the Kingmaker Chronicles, and I've heard great things about the series, and apparently Amanda Boucher is a very popular author that I barely know anything about, but I just hear that this is romantasy at its best. I don't know much about this book at all, but I just know that it's very hyped, and anyone who recommends very good fantasy romance recommends this series. So that's what I know so far. And the next book I put on this TBR is Neon Gods, or like any book in the Dark Olympus series by Katie Robert, because I've had Neon Gods on my shelf for I'd say 2.5 years now, and I need to get a move on. So I'm putting it on my 30 before 30, and a big reason why I've been holding off is because this is a 10 book series. However, that shouldn't stop me. The only reason why I do this to myself is because I like binging things, but I have to understand that these are standalone stories. They don't really need to be binged, but you know what, maybe, just maybe, I might have a book hangover after reading a whole bunch of them. So we'll see whether or not I will read the series before the 10th book, but if I don't, then okay. I just hope that the 10th book comes out before I turn 30. And the next book slash series I want to read before my 30th birthday happens to be the Unsealy Prince, or the Maze of Shadows series by Catherine Ann Kingsley. I've had this series on my shelf for a year now, and a big bad habit of mine, you're gonna see this as a theme throughout this video, is that I like to put romantasy that I think is gonna give me the worst book hangover after finishing it off. I like to put those romantasy novels slash series off because I have high expectations for them and I reckon that they are gonna deliver, but I just can't push myself to do it because I'm so afraid that I am just gonna be left an empty shell by the end of it. That is why I've put this series off for quite some time, but I really do want to get to this one, and if I have this bad habit of putting romantasy off, then I at least want to get to it before I turn 30. However, a fantasy romance that I haven't actually put off because I only just recently added it to my TBR as I'm filming this right now is The Savage and the Swan by Ella Fields. I just want to read another Ella Fields book before I turn 30, but I reckon that The Savage and the Swan, based on the fact that it's really hyped, is the way to go for me. I had the privilege of meeting Ella Fields at Rare. Honestly, this makes me so excited because I really loved Kingdom of Villains by Ella Fields, so I'm hoping I love The Savage and the Swan just as much. As I'm filming this video, I don't yet have my Fake Rate editions. I have pre-ordered the Fake Rate editions and they look stunning. Can't wait to read this one, and I really hope that this is one of my new favorite fantasy romances because Kingdom of Villains certainly is. And the next out of my 30 before 30 happens to be a reread. I want to give The Winner's Curse a second chance. So I actually started reading this series at the age of 20, and I just want to give the series another chance before I turn 30 because when I was 19/20, I only cared about fantasy books if they had like the chosen one trope and if the character was some sort of chosen one important character. I liked the special snowflake type of character. That was what I was into. Maybe at that time I was going through some sort of main character syndrome phase. I just liked main characters who were kind of chosen for things and were not in the background. And Kestrel in this series is very much a background strategic character, and that is pretty much her charm, and that is why a lot of people actually preferred the Winner's Trilogy over so many young adult series that were put out at the time. I didn't. I read the series and I was just like, what? This is just a waste of time, and I did not care about the strategy, I did not care about the politics, I did not care about the romance in this book series. I'm actually really happy that Illumicrate did special editions for the series, because if they didn't, I would not have been reminded of the existence of this book series, and I'm really happy that I was, because I had realized at the time that this set went on sale. I don't know if I gave this series a fair go. Is there anything negative that I can say about the series now? I don't think so. I do know that one of the books in this series does have the memory loss trope, and I understand why a lot of people were frustrated by that. However, I know where it happens, but that is pretty much all I remember about this book series, other than the fact that I think Aaron, he was angry at the beginning of the series and he rubbed me the wrong way, but at the very same time, time, now that I remember what the dude was literally put through, I can kind of empathize with that. So I think I'm gonna give it another chance. And I want to do that before the age of 30, just so that I can see whether or not my reading tastes over the last 8 to 10 years have dramatically shifted or not. I did the exact same thing with the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series. I read the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy when I was 19, and I just found it to be confusing and not what I wanted to read at the time. And then I gave the series another try 2 years ago, and it's one of my favorite series of all time. I recommended it to Camilo, and if I did not reread the series, I would not have been able to recommend it to my husband. I'm really hoping that a similar situation will come out of the Winners trilogy. And the next book I'd like to read in the lead up is A Taste of Poison by Tessandra Odette. This is the 4th book in the Entangled with Fae series, and as I'm filming this video right now, it has been 6 months since I have read a book by Tessandra Odette, and I need to change that. However, I wasn't the biggest fan of the previous book in the series, and I know that not every book is going to be the same in the Entangled with Fae series. I enjoyed the first book. I loved the second book, and I found the third book to be okay. But I have really high expectations for A Taste of Poison, and oh my goodness, A Dream So Wicked, I cannot wait to read. I very much have higher expectations for that one. However, I'm kind of hoping that A Taste of Poison is not disappointing eye candy for me. I just didn't really like Kiss of the Sulky as much as the other books, and so it kind of put me off from continuing the series. However, that needs to change because I loved Tessandra Odette's works previously. I'm just really hoping that I love A Taste of Poison just as much as the Fair Isle trilogy or Heart of the Raven Prince. I'm just hoping that it's not similar to Kiss of the Sulky. And this next one is quite a tome, and I think I have every reason to put it on this TBR because as much as I want to read it for Halloween this year, I don't know if I'm going to get to Tomi so quickly because Tomi is a tome. Oh my goodness, it's 750 pages, my goodness. Okay, an author who I do want to read from, however, very intimidating because I don't dabble in horror often. I do like reading horror-esque books every once in a while. Like I loved the Diviner series, and I kind of liked the Four Horsemen series as well, even though that's not like full-on horror. It does have horror elements to it because, I mean, it is quite gruesome. But with Junji Ito, it's kind of a little bit different because there are scary manga panels in here that I will probably have to visualize. I'll have to live with. However, Tomi specifically intrigues me the most. I believe that Tomi was meant to be a series, and then when it got translated into English, it got put into a bind-up. So, you know what? We're gonna see how we go with Tomi. But what I do know is that Tomi is the tome that I want to read from Junji Ito the most, because this is definitely one of his most known works. I do know that Uzumaki also is, but Uzumaki apparently is scariest. So I don't think that that's the first one I'm going to jump into. And you know what? Quite a change of pace from the other books that I've put on this TBR. I actually want to read a Shakespeare play before I turn 30. If you guys don't know, when I was 16 or 17, I loved reading the Shakespeare plays that were assigned to us for school. And at the time, I decided that I wanted to purchase a bunch of No Fear Shakespeare editions, especially because they were really cheap. Like I would go to a Dimmicks bookstore and see No Fear Shakespeare books for like $10 to $12. I don't know if inflation changed that because I mean, I'm seeing that the one I have in my hands was $12 Australian, and I reckon that they're gonna be 20 now. At that time, I really loved reading Shakespeare. And you know what? At the time that I'm filming this right now, I am completely obsessed with Succession. And it's seriously very funny because the thought of looking back at this video in a few years' time, I don't know whether I'm going to rewatch Succession within the next few years or whether I'm going to forget about it. But what I do know is that right now as I'm filming this, I am very much impacted by Succession. Like Succession has taken over my life, and I love seeing all the King Lear references in Succession. I love King Lear. I love Shakespeare's tragedies. However, at the moment, I'm pretty sure I've read majority of Shakespeare's tragedies, and I have some of his comedies on my TBR, and I ended up finding Midsummer Night's Dream on my shelf, and I forgot that I even purchased this, really. And this is very funny and ironic because I believe a couple of years ago, Kat from the channel Stars and Embers and I were talking about how we wanted to write books. Like I wanted to write a Shakespeare reimagining, and she wanted to write some sort of urban fantasy with potentially fae in it. And then we were like, wait a second, we could co-write a Midsummer Night's Dream reimagining one day. And you know what? We have not had that conversation since, but who knows? I think I need to read this to maybe spark that conversation up again. We will see. I have the No Fear Shakespeare edition of this play. I also have that for majority of the plays I have on my shelf. I don't think I have a standard edition really, because I purchased these at the the age of like 18 and 19. I was obsessed with purchasing these editions because these were the editions that we had in school. So I just kept on picking the trusted brand because there were so many to choose from. And I understand that yes, they are translated. If you are gonna judge me based on that, then you know, it's an ableist comment. I'm excited to read this one because I haven't had the thrill of reading Shakespeare in quite some time. And the next book I put on my 30 before 30 TBR is Well Met by Jen DeLuca. So this is a contemporary romance that I've been recommended countless times. I've even been recommended this from a work colleague who forgot the title of the book. They pretty much synopsized this book for me, and then when I saw the premise of Well Met again, I realized that they were recommending me the series, and I did not even realize it at the time because they had no idea what the series was called. I think it just completely escaped their mind, and they also forgot the author at the time, which was really funny, but they were like, oh yeah, it's the one about the Renaissance fair. I have been recommended this from a few trusted people, so I definitely want to get to it. However, I'm a little bit intimidated by it because I've heard so many good things. I can't let the hype stop me from reading what I want, and I want to read this eventually, so I gotta get to it eventually. Also, I really love this cover. And the next book I want to read before 30 is a book I feel like a lot of people say is a very important one, and that, my friends, is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I've heard good things about this one. I've also heard that this book is a little overhyped from some people. I've heard that this book is a moneymaker from some people. It's interesting. I've heard so many hot takes about Before the Coffee Gets Cold, but I've also heard great things from people who read it before it got super hyped. I'm really hoping that I do like this one and I'm able to just push past what everyone else has said about this book. I have just heard so many things about this book to the point that I don't know if I can separate it from the hype, but I want to give it a try. I also want to get back into translated fiction in general because I read like 15 Haruki Murakami books previously, and I want to get back into Murakami's works, but I also want to read more translated fiction. I definitely want to be open to more perspectives, and I mean, as much as I do love a good romance novel and a fantasy novel, every once in a while I also like reading a good translated fiction. And look, I went through that phase 3 years ago, my Murakami phase, where I was reading so many books from him. I just want to read more translated fiction like I did 3 years ago. I don't know if Before the Coffee Gets Cold might be a good start, but I just at least want to know why this book is really hyped. And speaking of Murakami, because he got a lot of mentions in that last segment, I still haven't read Blind Willow Sleeping Woman from him. I keep on shaming myself because I haven't read all the Murakami books on my shelves. However, when I really think about it, I own 22 different books by Murakami on my shelves. That's not including like duplicates, and I've read 15 of them. So I don't really have much to be ashamed of. However, I think my greatest shame is that I haven't read a Murakami book since 2020 or 2021. Yep, 2021, because I reread Norwegian Wood, but I haven't read a new book from Murakami since 2020, and that needs to change. Blind Willow Sleeping Woman, I believe, is a short story collection, and from experience, I love Murakami's short story collections. I especially loved The Elephant Vanishes. Like, that one was a really good one, and I really just miss Murakami's writing style. I understand that Murakami does write some problematic things, especially in the way that he writes women. I could rant on about that. However, I cannot help myself but be captivated in his stories. I really like his writing style and really like the plots of his books, and I appreciate the messages that he has in some of his short stories as well. So I'm hoping to get to Blind Willow Sleeping Woman sometime before 30. And the next book I've added to this TBR is Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. So I keep on telling myself that I'm going to get to this book. I never put it on a TBR, and the reason why I don't put it on a TBR is because, once again, I like binging things. So I've decided it's probably a safe choice to put this on my 30 before 30 TBR, because maybe by the time I turn 30, the series will have been completed. I really want to read this series. I've heard great things about it. I just know that I'm gonna love it. It's just, I don't know whether or not I want to invest myself in it before the series has been completed. Also, I mean, the covers, like, absolutely stunning. I don't think I can bring myself to unhaul the series because the covers are just so beautiful. And speaking of beautiful and pink covers, I also have Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber here. This is the Fairy Loot exclusive edition. I also have the standard editions because I could not help myself with how beautiful these covers are. And I know that that stresses a lot of people out, especially because I have not yet read the series. However, I have a feeling that this might just be one of my favorite series, and if it is not one of my favorite series, then I can resell this at a good price. At least I can guarantee that. Now, in terms of my relationship with Stephanie Garber's writing, I don't have the best relationship with it because I did not like Caraval. The Caraval trilogy is probably one of the biggest wastes of time for me, and I hate to say that because I understand why the book series means a lot to people. I have close friends who love Caraval, and I feel so bad when I have to tell them. So I didn't like it, and I try to be polite about it, but I actually really don't like it. A big reason why is because I'm so frustrated at the way Caraval was written. I really think that the entire series should have been a dual POV between the two sisters, because by the end of the series, I wasn't invested in any of them, and I wasn't even invested in their love interests. I wasn't invested in the story. The only character I cared about was Jax, and Jax is the love interest in Once Upon a Broken Heart. And I know I want to read the spin-off because I feel like Jax in the Caraval series was a waste of potential, and I'm really happy that the series follows him. And the only reason why I'm happy that I've read Caraval is to get some backstory, but I still felt like that was a little bit of a waste of time. However, I hear that some readers favor Caraval and don't like Once Upon a Broken Heart, or don't like Caraval and love Once Upon a Broken Heart. And I'm hoping that I am the latter here because, I mean, I did not like Caraval. I'm really hoping that Once Upon a Broken Heart will deliver. But once again, as I'm filming this right now, I've been putting this series off because I've been waiting for the third book to come out. And the third book is set to come out the year that I'm filming this. I don't know whether it's going to be expanded upon. I really hope that it's not because I want to get to it this year. However, if the series does get expanded, then I do know that I am going to wait until the series is completed before I start it. This is definitely on my 30 before 30, and I've been putting it off for years at this point. I sincerely hope, fingers crossed, I don't put it off until after I turn 30. And the next book slash series I would like to read before I turn 30 is one that I've included in so many TBRs at this point. I know some of you guys are tired of me mentioning that I want to get to the Savage Land series by Stacey Marie Brown. I know that it needs to happen. I know that this series might just be one of my new favorites, but I've been putting it off because, as I mentioned before, when it comes to fantasy romance that I believe is going to be like a new favorite, I will put it off for quite some time before starting it. Because I have a feeling that it's going to be so good that I'm just going to have a terrible book hangover, and I reckon that I might just have a terrible book hangover from the Savage Land series because I have witnessed a bunch of people have terrible book hangovers from the series. And at this point, you know, I can't say that I'm going to put it on a monthly TBR and read it because when I do, I don't commit to it. I told myself I was going to read this series last year. I did not. So I could at least set the bar low and read it before I turn 30. And the next book slash series I want to read before I turn 30 is To Bleed a Crystal Bloom, or just read the Crystal Bloom series in general by Sarah A. Parker. Unlike some of the fantasy romance that I've mentioned previously, this actually just landed on my TBR, but I've wanted to read it for quite some time, and I actually thought that this series was a trilogy until I recently went onto GOODREADS and found out that the third book is not the final book. It's not a definite conclusion. It leaves off on a cliffhanger. It's good that I know now that there are going to be more books in this series. However, I kind of hope that all the books in the series are published before I turn 30. I mean, it's not completely unrealistic, right? But I do at least want to start the series within the next 1 to 2 years. I've just heard really good things. I've seen a lot of fan art for it. As I'm filming this right now, I've just purchased a special edition of it, and I mean, like, I haven't even read it. I've also not read any Rapunzel reimaginings apart from Cress from the Lunar Chronicles, and I loved Cress. So I'm hoping that this Rapunzel reimagining is also going to win me over like Cress did. I need to get to this one sometime before October 29th, 2025. And the next two books that I would like to read before I turn 30 both happen to be by the same author, Carissa Broadbent. I personally want to get to Daughter of No Worlds, which is the first book in the War of Lost Hearts series. I always forget the title of the series, unless of course I'm holding the physical book up, because I always call it the Daughter of No Worlds series. I want to read this one first because it was the first out of the 2 hyped series by Carissa Broadbent that was published. It's a completed series, and I can see myself reading the series to completion before I get to Serpent in the Wings of Night. Even though Serpent in the Wings of Night, as I'm filming this right now, has been completed, I still don't own book 2 yet. I want to read all the spin-offs. I believe that there are going to be multiple duologies in the Crowns of Nyaxia series, so it doesn't stop here. I've heard endless hype for both these series, and I just want to jump in. But once again, as I mentioned many times in this video previously, I will often put a series off if I know it's going to give me a terrible book hangover. I've seen friends go through a terrible book hangover after reading The Serpent in the Wings of Night, and you know what? I reckon that that's going to be me too, so I've got to brave it. I can see myself reading both series, but let's once again set the bar low. I just got to read it sometime before I turn 30. Simple. And the next book slash series that I've put on this TBR is the Play to Prisoner series, or at least the second book in the Play to Prisoner series, Glint. It's very funny. I actually had a conversation recently in a group chat with Abby, and I think Abby assumed that I was following the series. But to her surprise, I told her that I had only read the first book. The reason why it came up was because Abby told me that she purchased the first book and she did not know whether or not to purchase the rest of the books in the series. I told her if she wants to read book 1, she has to have book 2 on hand because book 1 barely has any plot and it's pretty much a prequel backstory. That's kind of also why I decided to put the rest of the series off, because I wanted to read the rest of the series kind of together. As I've mentioned previously, you guys already know me, I am a series binger. I need to binge. At the point that I'm filming this, I'm waiting on book 5, which is the final book in the series. I just really hope that Raven Kennedy does not drag the series out any further. I hope that at the end of this year, the series is done so I can complete the series by 2024. If that does not happen, then you know what? I have until my 30th birthday. I've at least decided I want to read this book within the next few years, but as I'm filming this video right now, if the series is completed in December, like it was promised to be completed, then I will have completed the series by the end of 2023. And the next book I've put on this TBR is actually a book that has been on my TBR for years, but I recently got the Illumicrate special edition of The Long Way Down to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Look at how beautiful this edition is, by the way. Absolutely gorgeous. I have been told that this book is really good and that this companion series is absolutely incredible. I have a work colleague who absolutely adores Becky Chambers' works, and I definitely feel the hype surrounding me. I just need to get to them eventually. And a big reason why I've been hesitant to read Becky Chambers' works, actually I have 2 reasons. First of all, they're all kind of companion novels. At least in this series, they're all companion novels that surround like different characters, or at least each book follows like a set of characters and then another book follows a set of characters. So everyone has some sort of page time within the series. But secondly, I don't do well with space operas. Like, I mean, I do enjoy the space opera genre. However, I don't commit to it. For example, I love the Expanse series, but like, I don't go crawling back to that series every month, and I know I should be because I actually really do like the Expanse series, but I'm pretty sure I read a new book in the Expanse series like every year and a half or so. So that needs to change, obviously, with the Expanse series, but I've decided to put A Long Way Down to a Small Angry Planet on here because I'm pretty sure I first heard about this book when I was 19 or 20, so reading it before my 30th birthday would be somewhat significant. And I know so many of you guys are gonna be like, don't do it. Don't do it, don't read Zodiac Academy, but I kind of want to read The Awakening within the next few years. And the reason why I've put it on this TBR is because the authors keep on putting off the ending, and it's infuriating because I have waited for this series to end for quite some time. I was told that book 8 was going to be the final book, and it was not the final book. The final book got split into 2 books, and now I'm still waiting on book 9. You know what? What if the authors don't even complete the series at book 9? What if they keep waffling on and make book 10? Okay guys, I swear at the time that I filmed this, I had no idea about book 8.5, which is the bridging book between books 8 and 9. I am seeing comments on the Goodreads page for book 9, essentially saying that they're milking it out. Thankfully, I'm not the only one who thinks this way. But you know what? At the end of the day, I want to read The Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac series first, because I hear that that series is a good prequel series, and I hear great things about the series, unlike what I'm hearing about book 8 at the moment. And I don't want to read Zodiac Academy if it's leaving on a bad note right now. So I'm really hoping that I hear positive reviews about the last book in the series. But if the last book doesn't come out within the next year, I have to have some sort of faith that it's gonna come out before I turn 30. The 4th last book that I've put on this TBR is What Lies Beyond the Veil by Harper L. Wood. So I thought that this was a trilogy, and when I found out that this was not a trilogy, it pretty much demoted itself on my priorities. I have been waiting to find out how long the series is gonna be, but I'm kind of hoping that the series gets concluded somewhere before my 30th birthday, or at least close enough to it so I can see myself binging the series. I mean, look, not everyone has to do it the way that I do it. I know so many people who love this book series already, and they are willing to commit to the cliffhanger book hangover, and I admire that. I I'm not as strong as you. I'm sorry. I just either need to push myself to read it sometime soon or wait until it gets completed. But if it doesn't get completed until after my 30th birthday, then I will have failed this challenge. My third last pick for this TBR will be to reread The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. If you guys don't know, I actually attempted to read this a few years back when it first came out, and I don't remember anything from that read. I think I was going through a really bad book hangover slash reading slump. I was struggling to read anything at the time, and I decided, okay, maybe I'm gonna pick this dense fantasy up, and that was the biggest epic fail I've possibly gone through. I am so ashamed of that fail that I didn't even record that I read this book on Goodreads at all. I'm actually wanting to read this by the end of 2023, and the reason why I am is because, once again, the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge has a prompt for this year to read the largest book on your TBR, and I am personally interpreting that as immediate TBR because as much as I can read a dense Brando Sando book in his Stormlight Archive series, I'm not committing to that anytime soon. Those books I believe I am going to put on my 40 before I turn 40 or 50 before I turn 50, because I don't know when that series is going to end. I have the first few books on my shelves, but you know what? I'm not committing to them anytime soon. The largest book that I have on my shelf that's not from that series is The Priory of the Orange Tree. So it's gonna get done this year, or it has to be. I mean, I'm putting it on my 30 before I turn 30, but I want to get it done before 2023 ends, or else I fail the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge that I am doing pretty successfully at so far. Interjection from the future. So unfortunately, where I left off, my camera battery ran out and I had a place to be. I was literally trying to film just before a birthday party. I could not get it all done on time, but I'm here to present the last two books I would like to try out before I turn 30. The second last book slash series I would like to read before my 30th birthday just so happen to be the updated editions of the Bargainer series, or the first book at least, Rhapsodic, the updated edition. I've talked about this on my channel previously, but in case you don't know, the Bargainer series happens to be one of my favorite series of all time. The Bargainer was my favorite series of 2022, and I read the indie pub version of the Bargainer series. As I'm filming this video, I've not yet read the traditionally published editions, and I want to, especially because this series has gone through extensive edits, and Laura has promised that she's included bonus material within the series, specifically in The Emperor of Evening Stars and Dark Harmony. I also have not yet read Emperor of Evening Stars, and the reason why I haven't is because I've been told that it is kind of something that you can skip. However, I need to stop putting it off because I love Desmond Flynn and I want more Desmond Flynn content. I was just nervous about it at first, but being that Laura Falasa has added to the story, it honestly makes me feel more motivated to pick that novella up. I've decided that the next time I'm going to read the Bargainer series, I am going to include The Emperor of Evening Stars in my reading experience, and I really hope I love the series even more now that it has gone through extensive edits and that we have bonus content. I am nervous about it because I am so familiar with the original story. The original story holds a special place in my heart. I am pretty sure that the new story is not going to make me dislike Calypso or Desmond. I think it's just going to make me love them even more, but I'm still kind of nervous that I will get tired of them in the new versions. I really don't know. I just have to put my trust in Laura Falasa because she is one of my favorite authors of all time, and I usually trust her with the books I read from her. So I hope that I can do the same with the Bargainer series, but the Bargainer series, I don't know, it's just one of those really important series to me. I just hope that whatever she did made the story better. And the final book that I would like to read before my 30th birthday is actually a book I've been putting off for quite some time. It's a book that only came out last year as I'm filming this video, and I have definitely wanted to read it, but there are aspects of the biography that I find triggering. That all being said, I 100% support this author, and I want to show up with my support by reading this book or listening to this book because I actually have the audio edition of this book. I don't have the physical copy, and I want to do so before I turn 30. And that, my friends, is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is probably going to be the hardest reading experience for me. Some of you know what I have gone through in my personal life and kind of understand why this is personally triggering for me. However, I personally want to experience Jeanette McCurdy's first-hand story. And look, I've watched and I've read many reviews about this book, and I know that majority of the reviewers that I've watched from or I've read from previously have shared aspects of the story, but I just want to experience it firsthand. I want to show my support to Jeanette, and obviously I don't want to do that at the cost of my mental health. However, I believe that Jeanette McCurdy has a very powerful story, and I would love to experience that story from Jeanette firsthand. She also narrates the audiobook, and I've just heard that her performance was really good because it was very authentic. It's pretty much just her recalling her life story, and this one is going to be hard. However, I'm kind of excited to give it a go, and I know that I want to experience it at least once in my life. I was also a big fan of her growing up. I did not watch Nickelodeon as often. My cable TV only had Disney Channel, but every once in a while it would switch over to Nickelodeon, which was fun. And I would watch Nickelodeon on vacation because every vacation house had Nickelodeon available when I used to stay in the Gold Coast. So I used to be a huge fan of iCarly, and I watched her growing up, and I feel like I'm still somewhat of a fan, but I feel like I'm a fan of her now even more, and I want to support the story that she shared. Honestly, the fact that she's shared her own story means a lot to me personally as a fan, but personally I'm also very happy for her that it has freed her up so much to share it. So I want to give the audiobook my attention. So I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to stay till the end of the video, leave me the orange heart emoji, and if you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also I have social medias, Majestys of Books on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also at Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok, @gswizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
Started out with half and I flipped it in a double. Started out with half and I flipped it in a double.